evening. Down there, all of you afar, near, welcome. A lot of the talks I'm going to be giving now have to do with the connection between creativity and Dharma practice, and why this is so central. It's a central theme for a 3-month intensive period of practice. I just feel, every time I think about it, I just feel so happy. Because the arts provide all the same teachings once we recognize what the Dharma eye, opening the Dharma eye is referring to, right? So Dharma, the word Dharma, refers to, is translated as the law, meaning the way things function, the way everything functions. And in Buddhism, that is a very long tradition, and there have been many, many ways and distinct words and languages to describe the things that are essential to all functioning of every form and what is formless that we are conscious of. So that's Dharma, that's Buddhism. And then Zen is just this. The Zen teachings are all about just this, just the direct momentary experience, which is all-inclusive. So in Zen we talk about no self, or we could talk about all self. Every moment is, we separate, and we're very used to separating a sense of self from the world. But actually, when we begin to look very minutely at experience, there is no innate separation. There's also no lasting self, as well as no lasting anything. Everything moves on. So when we use the arts, we refer to visual arts, sound arts. We're going to do an improv, so it'll be really fun to look at the koans through enacting them like a play. And then we have poetry, which is looking into the what we can clarify, or what clarifies itself using words, because usually words get in the way of direct experience. We're so, this inner monologue that's going on all the time. We're narrating experience. And you can hear little kids doing that, when they're playing. They're saying, yeah, and then I'm going to the store, and then I'm going to do this, and now and it's all narration, and we continue to do that. So you go to work in the morning and you say, okay, first let's see, I need to da-da-da. Oh, can't forget the da-da-da, right? So we keep narrating everything. And then forget to just be in amongst all of that doing. So the arts really are about be. Be, bear witness, be affected by, experience, have our habitual experience challenged. So as we launch this Spring Ango, which is a time of more concentrated practice, in an attempt now to make a little bit more texture to the way that the year of practice unfolds, becomes more intensive for a few months in the spring, more intensive for a couple of months in the fall, and then the regular day by day through the whole year. Many have, we had our opening Ango Zazenkai yesterday. It was a long, wonderful day, and there were many people here. And it was focused on orienting in the way that I'm doing now to what this connection is between art and creativity and Dharma. Many people have taken a particular vow to strengthen their practice, and if you haven't done that and you are so inclined, it's very supportive. So you can decide, okay, what am I going to do to just do a little bit more engaged practice during this period of time. That could be increasing your zazen time. It can be adding bowing or chanting to your practice time. It can be a service project. There's also a vow for a creative project. And so people took all kinds of possible ways of approaching that on, and I encourage everybody here, think about how would you like to increase your sensibility to practice. So you might decide, okay, I'm going to draw every day, or I'm going to write a poem every day. April is poetry month, and it's kind of traditional during April to write a poem every day. So you may be joining with thousands and thousands of people who are doing that and having the experience of what is a poem. And we're going to explore that together. Cara and I are going to put together a workshop, a retreat, exploring the activity of poetry making and poetry being affected by poetry, seeing into it. When we start something new, it's really important to gather the tools and understand the words that we're using about it, to refine our intention. Thus, like if you're making a recipe, you get the foods out, you get the tools out, you begin to prep the various ingredients as you need to, and you combine it, you cook it, present it, eat it. I mean, it's just this whole progression. So that's what we do constantly with every aspect of our life. So this Spring Ango is all about clarifying what creativity means in the context of a life of practice. So it's applied creativity, as is always the case anyway. A mind that is attuned and appreciative of the creative motion that's involved in investigating our life and our experience. The creative motion that influences and that guides us and nourishes our investigation into this life and how to live more deeply into and out of our lifespan. It's an ongoing investigation and an ongoing creative project. So some words that we relate to creativity, and I don't know if you had this experience when we said this was going to be about creative modalities. Some might have thought, oh goody, and some might have thought, uh-oh, eeks, I'm not very creative, I'm not very artistic. That's that phrase that people use, I'm not very creative. So this is here to disprove that and to look into what you are not very, what you think you're not very. But when we think about creativity, we generally first off think of originality and expressiveness and imagination, spontaneity. But let's also include into the creative process that it's also uncomfortable. It allows for failure, for not knowing, and it doesn't have an end. It's a lesson, it's an open process. There's a lot of discomfort in creating anything. So it can take us anywhere, and depends on more than our own intention and skills, which is definitely true in our life. We have the conditions that we try to create that maximize our effectiveness and our happiness and our health. But there are a lot of other things operating on us as well that we also have to include in our response in our life, what we do with it. The creative process is experimental. It doesn't necessarily create a product. And I really want to emphasize that. Because in Zen practice, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, there is no product in spiritual practice. There's no product in spiritual life. That's not what it's about. But it wakes us up, it trains us in. So Dharma and any kind of creative project trains us in being more fluid and flexible. It engenders an agility of mind and heart. The phrase that we always use around here is turning on a dime, being able to turn on a dime, which means if something comes up and it changes what needs to be responded to, then that's just the way it is. Yeah, this life is just this. That's the meaning of that phrase, just this. So this really is like, this is Dharma practice. Beautifully, interestingly, delightfully extended in the way we're looking at it. And we come to live much more creatively through a sustained Dharma practice. But we don't just take this at my word. You have to look into it, what has come to you through your own experience of Dharma. And maybe not immediately, but there is an definite increase in a sense of spaciousness, in a sense of equanimity, amusement, humor. So looking into what are the conditions that prompt you and support you to face and relate whatever comes toward you. So that's something that this kind of theme will remind you to do. It's like, what are the things that are coming your way, and what are your choices? How are you responding? So the creative eye is not so different from the Dharma eye. And it also looks a lot like something that an anonymous medieval mystic described as the eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. So we could say, okay, we don't talk so much about God, but we do talk about all and everything. Everything, all inclusive. So we could say the eye with which all and everything sees God is the same eye with which all and everything sees me. That's also true in Dharma practice. There's a great reciprocity when our Dharma eye opens. We recognize, this cup. I use this cup for tea. And the cup gives itself to me to help me have my tea. Everything is reciprocally, there's just this constant interconnection of function. We're dependent, we're mutually dependent, every which way we turn, with everything that we do and experience. So this practice is a steady and committed investigation, just as any art form it requires a steady, committed engagement in it, so that it becomes more and more subtle and flexible, and begins to reveal its own offerings when you are that thoroughly surrendered into any activity. So this Ango encourages us to discover and refine and allow our internal process in a way that fulfills experience. When we're living truly, when we're living our true life, then our days are very fulfilling. When there's a stand-backness to how we're living, a disengagement, there is no possibility for fulfillment. But because there's no space, there's no open space for it. Ujiyama uses the phrase, the self settling upon the self, which are, the first time I read those, I thought, well, that's kind of a mysterious phrase. Like, what does he mean by the self settles upon the self? But if you take it as an instruction, especially in Zazen, but in any activity then, it's very specific and it's very helpful. So I encourage you, next time you engage Zazen, bring up that, it's almost a mantra, the self settling upon the self, and see if that can inspire an experience of greater engagement in this very, very moment and situation. We use the word direct experience. I need to start getting other words for that. Direct experience. But it means dropping all the commentary, all of the judgment, all of the things that we add to any experience that we can detect because they are they're kinds of tension that is added to sitting Zazen. When concentrate is very strong, there's not tension. So anything that's adding tension is a wonderful opportunity to say, what is this? What is this? So a word like creativity brings up all kinds of ideas and beliefs, memories about our own experiences in relation to creativity, to being creative. And sometimes that means remembering the incredible fun you had just drawing or painting or singing, dancing, or being in a play, Or it could be a mortifying experience when you were criticized or you felt totally embarrassed or self-conscious. So all that comes up, and it's really good to see it, because that's speaking of tension, that's a walloping kind of suffering based on a self that is very dense and fixed. We have all kinds of practices that help us with that. So whenever we have some kind of thing going on, I'll just talk about in Zazen or any time, we can apply the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So we notice we're really tensing about something. So where is that in the body? And that's a direct experience. Where is that in the body physically? Is it pleasant or unpleasant? Or neither or both? Often it's both in various ways. It's pleasant because it's familiar, it's known, but it's unpleasant because it's unpleasant. And then the third is the kind of the weather front, the energetic body, tense, spacious, soft, rigid. You just look into that. And then the fourth includes everything, including the previous three, but contents, mental formations, the contents of awareness. So we looked at that all the time. And I had a friend of mine who was a painter. She was just in the super realist school of painting. So I had one painting of hers that I did not realize was not a photograph. And one day I was saying, you say you're a painter, but here's this beautiful photograph you did. And she said, that's not a photograph, that's a painting. What was happening was she was so tight physically that she had to completely change. It was a big crisis. She knew she had to completely change the style that she was painting in. And that meant changing her mind. So that's another thing that we do. We change our mind. And very often art experiences change our mind, change our perspective, can even change our bodies sometimes when our perspective is profoundly effective. So one of the things that looking at forms of art help us do is look at how we symbolize our experience. So mostly in Zen practice, we talk about it, we have words about it. But now we're going to look at, and I encourage all of you, here we kind of talk about it, but you can go out. I recommend go to some museum shows, go to some concerts, go to some poetry readings. Just strike out into the great world of creation. Just as you do when you go hiking, because there's an awful lot of creation going on there. The way the ruts, that I walk every day out of Bald Hill, and one of the things I delight in is how everything continues to change constantly. The path that is walked is different. The beings, the grass beings and the bush beings and the tree beings are constantly different. The critters that suddenly appear. Today there were a couple of mergansers out in this new beaver pond. There are just two. First there was one, now there are two. And there are two ducks. They're always there. And they never were before. So now the pond is calling forth a community of swimmers. That's creation. It's natural, it's everywhere, it's everything. So when we sit in Zazen, it's just direct. We pare down to only what's right here as it passes through awareness. When there's not a lot going on, except what's going on internally in our own body and mind. And we get a good look. And it is it's, we point out that Zazen is the perfect expression of Buddha mind. Even before you understand what that means, you are expressing Buddha mind. Right now, we're expressing Buddha mind. What is? Here it is. Nowhere else, nothing else. Just this. So when I was preparing this, I was thinking about this phrase, just this, and I recalled how Aitken Roshi would always say when he was giving a Dharma talk, because it often revolved around just this. He was so intent on driving this point home so we would really get it, what he meant. And he'd always say, just this. His whole body would quiver. And in a way, it was a beautiful expression of just this. And the first time he did that and I saw that, I felt really embarrassed for him. Which was a great, as I reflect on that, I think, yeah, that was my self-consciousness. Self-consciousness is one thing that drove me to practice. I just couldn't stand being so self-conscious. I couldn't get a break from self-conscious. So, and he was not self-conscious, but when his teacher, Yamada Roshi, came for some ceremony that they were going to do, Aitken Roshi was so nervous that he kept knocking things over. So that was helpful too. Oh yeah, it's just a person. And his teacher comes, even though they're good friends. He just felt in that ceremonial context, he felt very, very like an object being. He was seeing himself as an object. So missing our direct experience, not really getting a good look at what that's all about, leaves us missing all the wisdom that direct experience contains about how this living field truly functions. This living field that we are always part of. So looking into various art forms can inspire us and suggest the open field outside of our habitual mind and heart. And that's one benefit from going to especially I was just at the art museum a few days ago and reminded how wonderfully effective strolling through a museum with a number of terrific shows going on right now just shakes it all up, and releases so much vitality. So I want to give you an example of that. I've always been familiar with the painter Mark Rothko. Is anybody here familiar with Mark Rothko's paintings? He does these usually very large paintings, and they are one color or just a couple of colors, and they're really vibrant and they're very powerful. And you wonder how can they be so powerful? So as soon as you turn the corner, they have this Rothko show, which has a display too of a painting that he did in 1930, 33, 37, 41, and you could see his eyes simplifying, and there's this incredible painting of black, and that's the first impression. But it isn't black, it's brown. Well, no, it's not. And I couldn't stop looking at it. It was such a koan. What is this that I'm seeing? What makes this so potent and so moving? It was so moving. And if I had painted, somebody said, paint a black painting with a gold slash at the top, I would do my best and get as deep black as I could, as thorough, whatever. I would have done something. And I don't mean to make it so careless, because I get into it when I start doing it. But looking at what he had done, it was many layers. There was underneath, at the very edges, you could see it began with white, gold, pink. There was a red in there. But by the time most of it got finished, it was like ancient loam. It was like dirt, like going in. You could almost smell it. You could almost smell the soil. It was like going into a burrow. That was the experience of it. And then at the very top, there was a band of light, and the way it was painted, I mean, I could say it was gold. There's a lot of different colors in the gold, but it also felt like it was coming from a very distant point. Even though it wasn't radiating out, it was just a square. So that's very inspiring to see something like that. It's like, live like this. Live like this. And actually, I know Mark Rothko was not a really happy human being. But this was, he was doing art. My father always said, you do art because you have to do art. And he had to do it. So that is the redeeming all the suffering into something that is so enlivening, such a generous offering. There are so many things that emanate from that painting that I could say about it. And it's totally the Dharma. This is the Dharma. So Zen is good for nothing. Sawaki Roshi used to say that, as reported by Uchiyama Roshi. And we can also say that art is good for nothing, in the way that this technological society is pointed. Art is not a priority, as you can tell by what's going on these days. It's not supported. But you don't do art because you can make a big living from it. You do it because you have to do it. You do it because it's your Dharma. It's your path. Just like Zen practice is not for everybody. Genki Roshi used to say that. Zen is not for everybody. And you can see why. It is a strict discipline like any art. And it yields the same pure heart that doing art does. So if Zen is good for nothing, then we're already complete. We're already complete. We're refining our completeness in this practice, because that's really what we uncover is, oh, I've always been complete. Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought I was missing something. And we are also missing something. But there's also another breath coming along for a while, anyway. So we could call ourselves, since we are all complete, missing nothing, just bringing ourselves as we are here, we could call ourselves the Come As You Are Zen Center. Because that's true. That describes any Zen center. Come as you are. go through all of this. Yeah, I just wanted to also make mention that when we enter into this present moment, we're wandering into unknown territory, even if we think we know. It's always unknown. It's the wilds of Zen. I think it was John Terris who said, Zen is the last wild place. The mind is the last of the wilds in this world. So true. And especially, when we begin to see everything that's going on that we never noticed before. Because, a lot of people when they begin practice say, well, I don't know if this is going to be okay for me because I was fine and then I started meditating and suddenly my mind was so busy. I don't know. I think that it's because you never noticed before. That was true of me too, anyways. It's good to look into our previous experience with creative arts and creativity and become aware of whatever beliefs we hold about ourselves in relation to creativity. In order to be free to turn in different directions, we have to know what the binds are. To be creative and to recognize possibilities freely outside of the ruts of the mind. So one word that I like for the ruts and kind of seeing them and beginning to open awareness is the interstices. We're looking into the interstices. So what lies below this experience, between these experiences. That's one of the practices. What is the gap? Find the gap between the thoughts. We look above and around to everything that we have not noticed before. There's always something, even in the places we have most been, we see things that we never noticed before. So when we refer to the Dharma eye, we're really noticing into the same field that the arts are at play in. So what's the Dharma of this couplet? Without a break, the willow paints the wind. Without a break, the willow paints the wind. That's just a flop over of conventional image expression. And if you don't know what it means, without a break, the willow paints the wind. And then spend time with the willow, which is always a good thing to do anyway. So now I'm going to just go through a few little quotes here. There is no must in art because art is free. That's the painter Kandinsky, whose paintings are pretty unconventional, and part of the unconventionality of his paintings is when they're not figurative, because they're just thoroughly abstract, but they're also, some of them are very ugly. And a conventional idea about painting is, oh, beautiful. No, not everything is beautiful. There's no must in art, because art is free. So let's ask ourselves, what do I know as free? So that can be used as a mantra. Free. Free. What is that? Free. And here's a poem by Master Senge. It's titled, In My 87th Year. Don't get a swelled head. Even the glory of the moon at its full lasts only for a single night. I would say those are living words. He starts by saying, don't get a swelled head. Wait a minute, what do you know about my head? Don't get a swelled head. The other thing about that poem is, have you seen the moon the last couple of nights? It's been, when we don't have clouds, we get to see the moon and planets and stars and all that, but the moon is so quiet, so beautiful. But it's also impermanent, so every night it changes. And then there's this sentence that I love. I don't even know what poem it comes from, by Louise Gluck. The beauty of the world must somehow rest on pure joy. That almost brings tears to my eyes. I mean, there are sometimes some things are so incredibly beautiful and tender that I feel like crying. I don't know if you've had that experience, but so moved. And those moments are also very quiet, with a still point right in. So the last thing I want to share is a poem by Liesl Müller titled In Passing. How swiftly the strained honey of afternoon light flows into the darkness, and the closed bud shrugs off its special mystery to break into blossom, as if what exists so that it can be lost and become precious. I'll read it again. How swiftly the strained honey of afternoon light flows into the darkness, and the closed bud shrugs off the special mystery, its special mystery, to break into blossom. As if what exists so that it can be lost and become precious. This is living language. There is no end. And no beginning. The strained honey of afternoon light. Oh. You can taste it.
turn to page